What's up guys, in this video you're going to be learning how to optimize your focus both for live poker and for online poker. We're going to be exploring the differences between the two and what you need to be doing to put yourself in a high focus state throughout your grind. So today's video came about after a conversation with one of my poker athlete students, and he was telling me how he plays live sometimes and online sometimes, and how he feels very different in those environments, and how his focus feels like it's almost like a different performance mode when he's playing live compared to online. And he asked me, Adam, should I be aiming to be in the same state of mind, focus-wise, in each environment? And my initial answer was yes, focus is the same whether you're playing live, playing online. But as we started to explore it and some of the kind of concerns that were coming up for him, I started to realize that how you get into a high focus state and how you stay in a high focus state is different in a live environment compared to online. There's different nuances and there's different things that you need to be aware of. So today, for you guys, I'm going to deep dive into exactly what you need to be aware of when you're playing live, how to get into a high focus state and stay there, and then we'll flip it around and we'll look at online and how you can optimize your focus in the online environment. Whether you're a live player or online, this is going to be very useful for you. Now, if you are an online player, you might want to jump to the online section, but I advise you to watch both of these sections, because once you understand how focus works and can be applied to different environments, it gives you a lot of power to optimize your focus wherever you are. Alright, so I'm now going to grab my whiteboard and we'll first explore how to focus whilst playing live poker. So we're going to do a deep dive on everything you need to know about how to focus in the live poker environment. First of all, we're going to cover environmental factors, what's unique about playing live compared to online. We'll talk about the pace of the game and why that's a big factor. We're going to talk about the big challenges when you're trying to focus and maintain focus in a casino. We'll talk about what's important, 2 important points, and then finally 2 key skills that you need to be working on ongoing if you want to have high focus in the live context. Alright, so first of all, environment. We're going to start thinking about being in the poker casino, being in a live environment. What's it like? Well, the first thing I want to talk about is it's very uncontrollable. Alright, so it's uncontrollable environment, meaning you don't dictate a lot of the stuff going on. You don't know what table you're going to be at, who you're going to be sat next to, what the waitresses are doing. So sort of uncontrollable variables. We'll talk about why this matters as we go through. First of all, we need to know we don't control everything that's going on, and there's lots of things that are going to impact our focus that are out of our control. In line with that, our environment is also changing. All right, it's changing a lot. It could be waitresses coming over, it could be seating arrangements changing. If you're playing MTTs, tables that get disrupted a lot, you have to go to new tables. So there's lots of things that are changing around us in our environments. It could be dealers getting changed. There's lots of things visually in our environment that is changing. All right. So we have an uncontrollable and changing environment. We're trying to hold our focus where we want to, but there's things going on around us which are out of our control. All right, that's the first thing to bring forward. Next thing we need to know is the pace of the games. And in all honesty, live poker is slow. If you compare online poker to live, it's nowhere near as fast. All right, so we'll say this pace is slow. All right. So I like to compare live poker to the analogy of running a marathon. It's generally slow and steady. Obviously, you might grind for an hour, you might grind for 10 hours, but the pace of the games is a lot slower. The way the cards are dealt, the amount of cards hands you're dealt per hour is really slow compared to multi-tabling in the online environment. As a byproduct of that, you can relax more, you can take your time more, and you can basically play longer sessions in the live environment compared to online. And yeah, it's a slow and steady approach over a high intensity approach. All right, we'll talk about more of that when we go into the online field, but for now we need to know the pace is quite slow. This is going to be important when we're trying to focus. Then the challenges. What are some of the main challenges we face whilst trying to hold our focus? Well, the first one is there's more idle time. All right, many hands you're not involved in. The majority of hands you're just folding out, you're not involved in. Whereas online, that's the opposite. You're always in the action. If you're playing heads up like I did, or spin and goes, or Zoom games, you've got action all the time. It's just non-stop action, so there's zero idle time. But when you're playing live, there's a lot of just sitting back, watching the action, but you're not involved. So there's more idle time. We'll talk about what we need to do with this idle time as we go through, but for now we're looking at the challenges that we face. Next thing is we can easily switch off. Because you're not in the hands, you can easily just be on your phone, daydreaming, watching the waitress, watching what's going on around you. You can just switch off. When you're not in the hand, you can just check your cards. If it's good cards, you can get involved, but it's very easy just to not be involved. So you can switch off. And because the games are a lot slower, it's easier to get bored. It's easier to get bored with the action, especially if you have a few hours of being card dead, you're just folding everything out. It's very easy to be bored. Alright, now when you're bored, you can do many things, but a lot of players will autopilot a lot. They'll play very ABC poker, not switched on, all these things together, so more idle time, switching off and being bored, playing more ABC poker and not being fully engaged. All of these are a nightmare when you're trying to have high focus. Another challenge is your environment has a lot of distractions. Like I talked about before, uncontrollable, changing, things are moving around. There's distractions going on in your environment. Maybe the guy next to you is berating somebody, maybe someone making small talk, maybe the dealer's doing something that's strange and annoying you, but there's things in your environment which can distract you, all right? So we've got this pretense of it's a slower game, it's not as engaging because there's not as much stimulation in the short term, and you need to find a way to focus, all right? So now we're gonna move into how to solve these problems, all right? So this is all kind of the problems that we face. Now we're gonna look at how do we keep our focus high in this environment. Well, first of all, we need to take in subtle information. All right, I'll talk about what that means. Now, when you're playing live, it's important to take in as much of the subtle information as possible. By that, I mean the things that are happening around you. All right, it could be timing tells on opponents, it could be body language things, it could be bet sizes that players are making. There's lots of small things that are happening around you. You might be paying attention on a flop that's coming down, but around you, players are reacting to that. So you've got things in your outer awareness. All right, so the way I like to think of focus is you've got center of attention, the thing that you're mainly focused on. Imagine the thing you're looking at could be the main thing you're focused on, and then things that are happening in your peripheral awareness. Now, when you're playing live, there's a lot going on in your peripheral, all right? So you're gonna be picking up subtle information of all the little things that are happening, keeping the mind engaged, and keeping yourself present in your environment. When you're playing online, it's not so much the case. You can kind of just knuckle down and just zoom in on your attention more, whereas when you're playing live, being very involved in your environment and taking in all the subtle information you can. And the next thing is you need to redirect your focus. Your focus is going to drift very often whilst playing live, and it's going to be drifting to things that are unrelated to poker. All right, so you're going to be thinking about what you're going to eat. Maybe waitress over there distracts you. Maybe this guy here is making some random noises after losing a hand. Think your mind's getting taken away from poker very often. So your things that are happening in your environment are taking up your focus. So you need to get good at redirecting your focus. All right, so we need to acknowledge that we're not going to be fully locked into thinking about poker every single second. Maybe you can for an hour, a few hours, but realistically, when you're in a live environment, there is things that are going to take up your attention. Your attention is going to drift more extremely. Or when you're playing online, there's so much coming at you, you don't have as much time for that, which we'll go into in a second. But you need to redirect that attention over and over. Oh, mind's wandering, bring it back. Mind's wandering, bring it back. All right, so what I'm trying to show you guys here is when you're playing live, there's a lot going on and things are a lot slower, and focus is more challenging in certain ways because there's not as many things to engage with, all right? But there's not as many things that you need to pay attention to. You can choose to, and you need to make sure you're redirecting your attention and taking in subtle information, but if you switch off for a while, get bored and sit back, it doesn't feel like it's costing you much, all right? It might not be costing you much in the short term, all right? So we need to be aware that subtle information taken in and redirecting our focus on opponents. And then the key skills you need to work on for high focus whilst playing live are, first of all, returning your attention to a focal point. And I'll explain what that means. As your attention is going to drift more frequently, because it doesn't need to be as switched on, you need to get good at returning your attention to a specific focal point. Now, for some players, they like to think about poker in terms of their own ranges. All right, so when they return to a focal point, they may return to a question like, what is my range here? How do I maximize my EV? All right, so the focal point is something that I want to focus now. This is what I need to pay my attention on to make the best decisions. All right. Others will like to focus more on their opponents. All right, so their opponents' ranges. That's just how they think about poker. So a good focal point for them might be to observe, whether it's them playing or somebody else in the hands. What have my opponents got here? What is he trying to rep? What's his range? All right, so generally the focal point would be a question or something that engages the brain on a very specific way of thinking. All right, so imagine you're playing live and the mind has drifted. Maybe it's something's caught your eye in the corner and you're watching something go on over there. You've lost a few minutes of the action and you now want to bring your attention back. You want to return to a focal point. You come back to the tables and there's two players in a hand. Because you're somebody who thinks about poker in terms of other people's ranges, you go, all right, back on the action. What has this guy got here? What's his range here? What's he trying to represent? You really engage in the action and you brought your attention back to that focal point, right? Now you're back engaged, you're back there, all right? Can you see how that would be very powerful to be able to hone that skill so you can always bring it back and reconnect, all right? Super important. And the final skill you need is to be able to dial up your focus, all right? You can have a lot of idle time when you're not in hands, but when it's your time to go, you're in a big decision, you need to dial up that focus, all right? Dial your focus up. Because you will have a lot of idle time where you're not engaged in hands, your focus might be a 5, maybe a 6 out of 10, but all of a sudden, boom, you're in a pot, a meaningful pot. Now you need to dial that up to a 9, a 10, and intensify that focus. You need to be able to go from low focus states to high focus states, all right? And this is why a lot of live players, like really high stakes guys, can play for lots and lots of hours. Like some of them report playing for like 24 hours straight, crazy amounts of time. And it's because they're able to go from this kind of low idle state. So when they're not playing in hands, they'll be more relaxed, more sat back, the mind will be daydreaming a bit. But then all of a sudden it's something that matters. Boom, they're straight to a 9, straight to a 10. Where other players don't have that change of gears. They're almost like stuck in a mundane mode. Maybe if something extreme happens or they're on a river spot, they're like, right, pay attention, but too late. You should have been dialed up. As soon as you're in a hand, as soon as you're going to play pre-flop, boom, dial up that focus to a 9 or a 10. You need to be able to intensify that. All right, so to summarize, we've got an uncontrollable and changing environment. The pace is very slow. Challenges are idle time, switching off, and boredom. Important to take in subtle information and redirect your focus often. And the key skills you need to be working on are returning your attention to a focal point over and over, all right, and dialing up your focus. If you can work on those continuously, you'll always be able to get your focus back to where you need to be. And then when you need to be high on focus, you can dial that up. All right, and those are the things you need to work on. Bringing it back and dialing it up. All right, we're now going to explore the differences playing online poker, why it's different, and what you need to be doing to optimize your focus whilst playing online. So what's different about online poker? First of all, we're going to explore the environment in the same way. We'll look at the pace and look at the challenges you face, what's important to take note of, and the key skills you need to be working on going forward. So compared to playing in a live environment where there's lots going on, there's lots of changes in your environments, when you play online, it's actually very controllable. All right, you can choose how many tables you're playing, you can choose how your screen looks, you can choose how your desk is set up, you can control all the variables in your environment. All right, so first of all, controllable. And in line with that, it's also very static. You might have certain changes happening, so you might have more tables popping up. If you're an MTT grinder, your tables probably fluctuate quite a lot. But if you're a cash game player or a sit and go player, you can just choose how many tables you want to play. Well, that's 2, 4, 6, 10. You choose them out. Now, there's going to be limits around that, but generally, you'll have a certain amount of tables that are quite static. All right, there's going to be some changes, but very static compared to a live environment. All right, so controllable and static. And it's very important that you make sure your environment is set up to your preferences. All right, there should be no distractions whatsoever in your environment. Phone completely out the room on airplane mode. Your desktop very clean, just your poker tables. Browsers completely off, nothing to distract you. All right, you get to control it, so you need to use that wisely. All right, and then it's going to be quite static once you've done that. Hopefully, if it's not static, that probably means you're getting distracted. You're going on YouTube. You're altering your environment. You're controlling your environment in a negative way, and you're basically getting distracted. But we're not going too far into that one. But then we've got to look at the pace. So compared to playing live, online is fast. If you're multi-tabling online, you're playing 4 to 8 tables in your format, it's fast. It's a quick pace. All right. Now, again, to compare it to a kind of sport, it's more like a sprint. By a sprint, I mean it's intense. The intensity is high when you're playing online. Some of you guys will be maxing out your tables and it'll be very intense. It'll be like super high speed multi-tabling. Others will be more slow and steady, playing 2 or 3 tables, but still it's fast paced coming in. Now this matters because when something's fast and intense, we can't keep it going as long. All right, Usain Bolt couldn't run a marathon at his speed. All right, he's gonna pan out like very, very quickly. So when we're go intense at something, we need to factor in more recovery, which I want to talk about as we go through this. So just at the pace of the game instantly tells us that we need to approach things slightly different. All right, so next thing, there is no idle time. All right, so online, you just have time to wait around. If you're just daydreaming for 5 minutes, not paying attention, there's beep, 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 beep. Make a decision, make a decision. There's no idle time. You've got to play, unless you're sat out of tables, no idle time. All right. In line with that, you're always switched on. You always need to be focused. You haven't got time to drift. It's too costly to not be locked in. When you're playing live, you can have minutes, maybe even half an hour of not really paying much attention. Try doing that live, it's gonna cost you a lot. All right, so you always need to be switched on. Your focus always needs to be primed and high. And one of the bigger challenges we face playing online is mental fatigue. There's so many decisions that you need to make so quickly. Fatigue builds. So mental fatigue is one of the challenges whilst trying to hold focus. Now, if you find yourself autopiloting, if you find yourself playing ABC poker, that is often a sign that you're struggling to focus because of mental fatigue, or you're disengaged. You're not just bored and you're not engaged, which is a different problem. But a lot of players find themselves almost like playing this autopilot form of poker because they're fatigued. They're making so many decisions. Their mind's like, I can't keep up the high intensity of focus. It'll downregulate. If you try and play 4+ tables of any format for 3+ hours without a break, I can tell you mental fatigue will start to be a factor, and you'll start to autopilot to downregulate, to give that mind a switch off, because it can't go all out, right? Like I said before, it's like Usain Bolt trying to run a marathon. It's 100-meter pace. You can't go intensely for long durations, all right? So when you're playing online, it's important to take in a lot of information. You almost can't not take in a lot of information. There's so much coming at you, but obviously you've got HUD stats on certain players. You've got so much going on in the live environment, and we need to be able to take in a lot. If we're not taking a lot of information, we're just playing our own strategy, again, we're going to play this ABC approach. There's so much information there, and the speed of information is so quick, we need to be able to take in a lot of information. In line with that, when information is coming in quickly, we need to be able to process our decisions quickly. We can't dwell for ages. If you watch live players, often, but occasionally, they'll just take 5+ minutes to make a decision. If someone doesn't call the clock on them, they can go for ages and ages to make a decision. Online, that's not an option. You might have a time bank for a few minutes, but you can't use that every decision. So you can't just like wait and wait. You've got to make a decision. Go, go, go. So if you're too slow, you're gonna find yourself timing out, you're gonna find yourself rushed and unable to make good decisions. All right, so process decisions quickly. So in this fast-paced online landscape, where things are coming at you very quickly, you're having to make the decisions very fast, you've got to develop certain skills that allow you to be able to handle that. Now, when it comes to focus, like we've said, no idle time, no switching off. So the first skill you need to have as an online player is you need to be fully engaged. You always need to be engaged. You can't drift in autopilot because it's too costly. You can't have a 6 or 5 focus. Your focus always needs to be a 9 or a 10. It needs to be really high always, fully on, full intensity. We're going fast speed in terms of processing, and you always need to be engaged. Completely opposite to live, so fully engaged. You need to always be switched on. And the second thing we need with that, if you're going intensely at something, we need to factor in breaks. We need to have active recoveries very often. I say very often, we're talking every 60 minutes to 2 hours. You need to factor in a small break, whether that's 5 minutes, whether it's 10 minutes. I actually like the MTT structure, where it's 55-minute grind and a 5-minute break, because that enforces a reset, all right? Because you're going intense and then you need to break, all right? So the skill you need is fully engaged and then reset. Fully engaged and then reset. And this reminds me of my running days when I used to do middle distance running. And middle distance running is pretty much the same as long distance, always in motion. When you have a recovery, so let's say we did 400 meters around the track, we then jog laps around the track as our recovery. Now, I used to watch the sprinters who did the inverse. They used to basically sprint for 50 meters and then rest for like 3-4 minutes. And at the time I was like, God, these guys are so lazy, they just sit around. But looking back, they were actually going super fast, in high intensity, they were fully engaged, fully activated, and as a result, they need to rest. They need to reset so they can go intense again. Whereas we, as distance runners, because we're going more of a slower, steady pace, you can keep that going for ages. You don't need as much recovery, all right? So the main difference between online and live is online, it's so quick, it's so much information coming at you. You need to be fully engaged, fully activated, fully in the zone, and then you need to have breaks, regular breaks, get away from your computer and reset yourself. So best resets for the players I work with, I tell them to get up from their computer, get away from it, ideally sometime outside where you can reset your visual field, so you're up close next to the computers, so your visual field's kind of at this kind of short angle. You want to give yourself a larger visual scope, which resets the kind of focus muscle, lowers that intensity of the focus, and allows the brain to reset. But the main thing is get away from the decision-making process, get away from your poker environment, and give the brain a little bit of downtime. All right, this allows the brain to process, allows those focus muscles to recharge a little bit, and you come back. All right, so let's say if you're playing 5 hours of poker, you might want to play 90 minutes, 10-minute break, 90 minutes, 10-minute break, 90 minutes, in that range. All right, and you want to be thinking about how can I factor in regular breaks, and think about it for yourself. Most players want to take a break before 2 hours. All right, 2 hours is like pushing it. If you're someone who thinks they can do over 2 hours, all right, great. But I would challenge you to really assess, is your focus drifting off after a few hours? Are you really going fast and intensely with your ability to hold your attention? Or has your focus drifted? Are you autopiloting a bit? Have you acquired a little bit of mental fatigue after 2 hours? And is your focus going lower? All right, so the goal with online poker is to stay high focused always, take breaks to recharge, and then go back to being high focused again. Whereas live poker, we're going to be more slow and steady. We're going to be switched off, idle time a lot, and then we're going to dial up that focus. We're going to go from low to high focus very often. All right, guys, hopefully this was helpful for you. Let's give you some useful tips, whether you're a live player or an online player. Please let me know in the comments or by giving this video a like if you enjoyed this style of video, the live versus online comparisons. I've got a few other videos that I can cover about different skills that you need in different contexts. So if you do like this, do let me know and I'll put those on the channel soon. If you want to go even deeper into how to train your focus, I put a free PDF in the description. It's the 8 skills needed for elite poker performance. Skip to skill number 3 where you'll find focus, and we go in depth on how to optimize your focus at the poker tables. All right, guys, that's all for today's video. Smash the like button before you go. See plenty more from me very soon.